Okay, so I think it started. So hi, I'm Magda, and I have Tian here with me as well. And we are both from General Intelligences, and that's a nonprofit that's completely youth-led. And we are partnering today with Marissa and Lauren from Nice for What. And I guess anyone that wants to go ahead and introduce themselves next, just unmute your mic and go ahead.
Hello, my name is Marisa, and I am with Nice for What. I am one half of Nice for What, and I am a junior at UC Berkeley studying international human rights law, media, and entrepreneurship. Basically, as I'll start off the introduction to our organization, and Lauren can finish it. But Nice for What was born just out of realizing that college is really a pivotal and crucial time, especially for girls, where you're alone for the first time, and you're forced to really come to terms with finding yourself. And in finding yourself, you're faced with a lot of external challenges that sort of make navigating that a lot harder. So we came up with this organization to, one, provide resources to girls who sort of felt as though, like, during college they may have struggled or strayed away from who they were at the beginning, but then also helping to navigate them back to who they were. Our logo is being who they were raised to be.
Sorry, hi, I'm setting up our presentation, but Marisa pretty much gave the rundown of what our organization does. So thank you everyone for coming, and I'm really excited to partner with General Intelligences and just talk to everyone. Okay, I'm gonna share screen to start our presentation. Sorry about the delay.
Hi, I'm Magda. If you can give us sharing permission, or especially to Lauren.
Okay, should be able to. Okay, looks like we can see the screen.
Okay, so as described, this is a how to advocate for yourself webinar. Really, we're breaking it down into 4 areas: relational, social, professional, and academic, because we find that, especially not even just for college students, but in life, these are 4 main areas where you really, in order to get the best results, you have to be able to advocate for yourself and stand up for yourself. And it's also best not to be passive in these areas, because again, that results in further like low self-confidence or just issues along the way in one's journey. We already touched upon this, but the partners for this event are Nice for What and General Intelligences. So meet the panel. We're going to do introductions. We're going to call people out, and our lovely panelists will speak and sort of share their background. And we've sort of especially chosen these people because they have expertise in their area, not just expertise, but they are very passionate about sharing that with others. So first, we're going to start off with Dr. Tara.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Tara, and I am assistant professor at Cal State Fullerton. Specifically, I teach and research relational communication and sexual communication. I also am the creator of the Instagram page For Real Sex Ed. And I am passionate about talking about the contemporary, modern love and relationship, and advocating for yourself as a woman being in a relationship and being a social being. So I'm excited to be here, and thank you for the invite.
Thank you for that explanation. So next we will be going into Athena Pham. She's a digital marketing manager.
Hi, yes, my name's Athena. I am digital marketing manager. I, take charge of all the digital marketing efforts in terms of advertising online, social, organic, paid, all of those. Um, so I'm so grateful to be here and just talk about my experiences, being able to share how I'm an advocate for other women, especially women who have been maybe sexually abused. I'm just here to kind of like learn from everyone and make people feel comfortable and with who they are and kind of share their own experiences. This whole collective experience for everyone. And yeah, I'm so excited to kind of provide value for everyone.
Thank you. We are excited to have you. So next we are joined by Stephanie Haynes. She is the Associate Director of Student Aid at Bowdoin.
You got it right. Hi, everyone. I'm Steph. I'm an Associate Director of Student Aid at Bowdoin College in Brunswick, Maine. I've been at Bowdoin for about 5 years now. I also do a lot of volunteer work, particularly with high school students who are in the process of applying for college and helping them navigate the financial aid process, and also just kind of navigating that whole admissions process because it can be pretty overwhelming. So I'm excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Most definitely. So our last but definitely not least panelist that I'm going to introduce is Laura Yang. She's a master's student at Cornell University as well as a Deloitte intern. Former Deloitte intern or
to be Deloitte intern. It's a little bit of an interesting situation with COVID, but yeah, that's basically it. So I wanted to let you guys know that I was a Cornell undergrad studying human development. And during that time, I was definitely vested in community interest and just being able to help people, especially in terms of transferring over to their role from high school over to undergrad. So I worked as with Crimson Education. It's an organization that helps high school students prepare for university. So that was one of the main roles when I was an undergrad. Another additional thing that I worked on was orientation. So a lot of that was really just helping students orient themselves to life as an undergrad student. And when I was an undergrad, I realized that I was pre-med at the time and medical school wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So now I'm pursuing my master's in health administration and have decided to pursue a career in healthcare consulting. So definitely here to be able to provide that advice as a young professional and as well to learn from these wonderful and very well accomplished women who have been introduced before me. Thank you guys.
So now that you've met our panelists, we're going to jump right into the discussion. We've developed a few questions, and they will have the answers that is tailored to their specific area of expertise. So, and I also wanted to sort of mention that this is a safe space. So this is also, although I'm going to be asking questions and it's, it's prepared, it's also conversational. So if anyone wants to jump in and, ask a clarifying question, please feel free to do so. And also other panelists, if you feel like you want to answer this question from your perspective, that's great as well. This is just supposed to be a conversation because we believe that dialogue is really what's going to be effective in making the changes that we want to happen. Okay, so now that I've given that spiel, let's get into the questions. So first, I'm going to direct them to the professional aspect. So it's going to say, the first question is, what would you want your 19-year-old self to know about her career path? What advice would you give her?
I can jump in. I would say that it's not always a straight line, and it's also okay to not know what you want to do, especially at 19 years old. I had no idea. I didn't even know what I wanted to major in at that point. So I went to a small private liberal arts college in Iowa, which is also my home state. And we weren't even allowed to declare our majors until the end of our second year, and thank God for that. So I did end up declaring a political science major, and I interned on the Hill in DC with a congressperson. And after that experience, I was like, this is actually not for me. And that's okay too. Like, that's part of this whole process of getting to know who you are and what you want to do. So it wasn't until my senior year of college that I was like, maybe I want to go in the direction of higher education and higher education administration. So I didn't make that decision until pretty late in my senior year, and it's worked out really well for me. It was the right choice for me, but I never would have guessed that when I first started college.
Well, that's comforting to hear, because sometimes we feel as 19-year-olds that we have to have it all figured out, but it's good to know that we don't.
I'll go ahead and chime in on this as well. I think I want to echo what Steph said, because I definitely had a similar experience. When I was in high school, probably even back in middle school, the only thing on my mind was going to medical school, and I thought that was the only path available to me. So I went through all of undergrad taking these pre-med courses, and it wasn't until my senior year when I realized that I actually did not like chemistry, I didn't like biology, and I ended up meeting with a trusted advisor during my senior year who we were just talking about what I should do as my next steps, because I thought I had everything planned out. And it wasn't until I realized that medical school might not be where my heart was after all that I decided, you know, I really need to look inside myself, really seek some advice from somebody else. And I was telling him about this medical mission trip that I took to Peru, where I was able to really see how the communities got together to provide care for people in the more rural areas who couldn't access doctors and care in the main cities. And he asked me, do you feel like you would be more comfortable providing that one-on-one care, or do you think you would rather make an impact on a structural scale? And I thought, wow, that is something that I had never thought of, because I had that single mindset and there was nothing that would take me away from that. So I think for me, it was just about being able to take that step back and really look at what I was good at, what I was interested in, because I did human development in undergrad. And the main reason I did that was because of my interest in working with people and understanding motivations. And that's how I ended up pursuing my master's in health administration and getting into healthcare consulting. Because before I didn't even know what consulting was, but as soon as I heard about it, I thought it was the most interesting thing, and I thought I could make an impact in so many different areas. So I would just say, don't be afraid to stray from the path that you thought you set out for yourself at first.
I think that's beautiful. I would like to add to Steph and Laura's story. I think that just shows like your adaptability to your situation. And I think that's one of the strongest suits you can have in a professional setting, being able to adapt when you need to, and also be comfortable with growth and be comfortable with hardships, understanding that you won't make the perfect decision every time. You will fail a lot. And when you accept that and you're able to grow from that, I think that really excels, who you are in a professional and even a personal setting. So yeah, I think that's something that I've been able to accomplish, and that has helped me a lot.
What I would have told my 19-year-old self was to build strong relationships with my teachers, professors, and literally anyone that I vibe with and I look up to and I can relate. Because these relationships can either change your path or give clarity to your current path. I had an amazing mentor in my master's program, and that changed my path. And I also had an amazing advisor in my PhD program, and that gave clarity to my current path. I wish that I had a mentor as well when I was 19, but I did not. So that is the one tip that I always tell my undergraduate students: build relationships with your teachers, professors, and anyone that you feel like you look up to.
Okay, our next question is, was there ever a time when you took the road less traveled to get to where you are now?
I think I can help answer that. I actually don't have a college degree. I dropped out of college to pursue digital marketing. My major was psychology, and I was extremely passionate about that. Extremely passionate about people, learning, human processes, and getting to know like the why behind how we think, how other people feel. And I think it's so valuable to have that skill, interpersonal skills, but I think I kind of like paved my own road, especially within like an Asian culture. You're kind of, it's systemic to feel like you must go to college, you must get a degree, you have to, be a doctor, maybe someone that's deemed as successful. But I actually dropped out within my second or third year because I found like um, I don't know, a passion of mine that was faster to pursue, which was digital marketing. And from there, I kind of just was self-taught. I just indulged in all things digital marketing and kind of self-educated. And I freelanced, and then I built my own company. And yeah, I think it was definitely not by the books, but by that I gained self-confidence. I gained the support I needed from my friends and family. I really understood, kind of like who I am and what like I really care about versus just following the path that someone else wanted me to go through.
Okay, our next, oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love hearing that, Athena, and I think that it's amazing. And I always tell my students that education doesn't just come from a classroom, education comes from everywhere. And if you either don't choose to go to college, or maybe you don't have the opportunity to go to college, it doesn't mean your education stops. Right? You educate yourself every day. I educate myself every day. I try to read every day, watch a YouTube video where I learn something, which is why it's really inspiring what you just shared. I would say that one of the things that is untraditional in my position to be as a professor and someone that teaches in a college space is basically confidently and unapologetically sexual. And my current class is sexual communication, and I've taught this for the last year at Cal State Fullerton. What I've learned is when I'm uncomfortable and in my shell, I cannot share these knowledge and research on sex as comfortably, and it doesn't serve my students. So I just basically have to push myself, come out of my shell, be untraditional, non-traditional, or unconventional, whatever word that goes with that, and just be myself. And if I want to say fuck, I say fuck because most everybody says it. I don't know why it's a taboo. A lot of things in our culture is currently that is considered currently taboo isn't really, because it's all socially constructed. So that's the one thing that I thought of, was just being myself. And if I want to be something that's untraditional, that's fine.
I love that. I feel like that's so true, and it really applies now because you can learn so much just like the internet, or like do whatever you want to do as long as you really care and want to pursue it. So our next question is, can you talk about the importance of setting boundaries in all relationships?
Okay, since I teach professional communication, I'll go first. What I think when it comes to boundaries, and I'm not talking about professional relationships, I'm solely talking about romantic and friendship. So romantic relationships and friendships. I think about boundaries in three factors: time, effort, and integrity. So I set boundary with my time, I set boundaries with my effort, I set boundaries with my integrity. Do you have friends that you feel like you spend much more time listening to them venting and complaining, and they never ever serve you or listen to you? Yeah, then that's not a good friend. Do you feel like you're, developing a romantic relationship with someone where you put a lot of effort in that they don't seem to be putting in as much effort? According to equity theory, which looks at equitable relationships, if you're in a relationship that you put in a lot more effort than the other person, you are setting up a terrible foundation to build any relationship. So you gotta have boundaries on that. If you're putting in too much effort as compared to the other person, you need to tell yourself to start self-valuing and be more, I guess, be more considerate of your own time and effort. And lastly is integrity. If you're doing something that is not based on your morals, do you want to do it? A lot of my students ask, like, Dr. Tara, like, you know, I love this guy, like but he's in a relationship. I don't know, like I feel bad, but also like what we have is so special. I said, what does your moral say? You know, does it say like, go for it, live your life, you know, you only live once? Or does it say, what does this other woman think? What if I was that other woman? How would I feel? Should we all have open communication and set it straight? If anything compromises your integrity, you should set that boundary and stop your action. And so these are the three things that I think about: time, effort, boundaries, time, effort, and integrity. And if anything is compromised, I don't pursue whatever it is that I'm trying to do.
I love that. I feel like it's a really important thing to remember too, because like it's your life. So it's, do you want to live like that, or what do you want? Our next question is, there's a book called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. How did you learn to be a force in your workplace and advocate for your professional goals?
I'll start with this one. I think for me, this was my first job, like full-time job after graduate school. I started at Bowdoin in an assistant director position. And I entered that position like wondering if I was up for it, I guess, like if I was underqualified or if I would be successful. And I think that kind of lack of confidence doesn't serve me, and doesn't serve anyone, my colleagues or my students, very well. So I think for me, entering that with the humility that I have a lot to learn, but also the confidence that I can do it. And especially entering the workforce as a young woman. I started this job when I was 23, and I had parents of students thinking that I was a student, at the college. And so that was really hard to overcome. And that does, I don't want to say crush you, but like it makes you feel like they're not valuing your professionalism, which doesn't feel good. So I think learning to overcome that and keep moving forward, and but also learning as much as you can along the way from your colleagues, but also supporting them as well and what they need to learn is really important. I don't know if that actually answered the question, but that's what I first thought of when you asked it.
No, that was a great answer. And I feel like just a reminder too, that it's really, sorry, I'm like reiterating the same point again, but it really is like your life, and you can control like other people's perceptions, or not completely, but you can do your best to be what you want to do.
I'll go ahead and speak to this question as well. So as an undergrad student going into my master's program, there was a huge shift in focus from kind of just figuring out what you wanted to do to a great focus on professionalism and learning about how to be in the industry. So one of the things that I definitely wasn't confident in was going in as an undergraduate student, not having ever worked before, and having a cohort with peers who have worked for several years or who have come out from a different industry. And I think for me, it was just being able to look at not things that I couldn't do or not experiences that I didn't have, but leveraging the experiences that I did have. So I was really able to speak to a lot of the leadership experiences that I had in undergrad and what I learned from those, and really talking about how I was able to shape those experiences into how I could see myself as a good professional in the field.
So I guess kind of to go back to college and talking about academics, did you believe that you had an empowering education? How do you help to make your students' educational experiences empowering? So I guess for anyone who wants to answer, it feels that they have a point that can relate to this question.
I think as transitioning from a specialist to a digital marketing manager of a global company, I think that really shifts your role from becoming, someone who is just, an associate to someone who has to lead. And I think some qualities that are really important is empathy, having a lot of empathy to relate to the people that you work with, having professionalism to understand when to kind of be a leader in that sense and be more professional rather than just lacking that. I think in a sense, when I had partnerships with Amazon and Best Buy, you have to assert yourself in an appropriate manner, because in one email you can ruin the entire relationship and how they view you and the partnership. So I think that I guess to kind of answer your question, I think empathy and how you relate to others, how you make other people feel good about themselves, how you praise other people, make them feel special and valuable is very important. And also the professionalism in just any type of relationship, understanding how things that you say can really impact someone.
I would totally echo what Athena just said, especially in my role working in a financial aid office. Empathy is like the #1 most important thing in my professional life, because we are often having very personal and sometimes very tense conversations around money, and family relationships. It all kind of comes into play when you're talking about how to pay for college. So trying to understand where that student or that family is coming from is the most important thing to bring to those kinds of conversations. I think my education, I do feel, was empowering, specifically thinking back to my undergraduate education. I had so many people who were supporting me, not only professors, but people in the financial aid office and other people across campus. And I think for students, finding those people, whoever they may be, to be their support system is the most important thing that you can do while you're in college, which kind of gets back to what Tara was saying about building those relationships. And I guess in some sense it's sort of networking. Maybe that's a little too formal of a word to use in some respects, but finding your people on a college campus or in a workplace or wherever you are is so important, so that when things are going great, you have people to cheer you on, but when things aren't going so well, you have someone to fall back on and support you.
Building off of that, both on empathy as well as social support, these are, I believe, the most important things when it comes to social aspects of being a professor. How I empower my students is mainly through listening and asking questions. What I've learned in the last 10 years of teaching in colleges is that a lot of times students don't need or want advice. They just want someone to listen to. So I said, what can I do for you? They come to my office, I say, what can I do for you? And they started talking about whatever they're going through. And I just keep asking questions about their hardships or like social situation or like academic stress. And a lot of times they answered their own questions. They just wanted to be listened to. So listening a lot and asking questions.
So my next question, and I'm back, I know Lauren asked a few questions, but is going to be, are grades everything? And it seems as though as a college student, it seems as though grades, tests sort of dictate our future. But what advice would you give to a student whose intelligence does not conform to a typical classroom setting?
I'll go ahead and speak to this question. So just as the perspective of a student myself, I definitely thought grades were everything back in high school and even going into college. But I think it wasn't until I got my first C in chemistry when I was very, very humbled and realized it's not the end of everything for me to have not done well in this class. I think the thing to keep in mind is that grades don't necessarily define you, but it's rather what you're learning from the experiences. Just because a C is reflected negatively on your report card, you don't always have to see it as, oh, I failed this class, but rather you can see it as something that has provided you a learning opportunity. So I remember when I was applying to my master's programs, I was thinking, what are these admissions officers going to do when they see all these poor grades on my transcript? But they always gave me that space to be able to kind of explain, like, so what did you learn from this? What did you think about that? And I think for me, it was just being able to say that I don't see these as failures, but I saw these as learning opportunities to do better for myself. You know, going into college from high school, I didn't have the best study habits. I was suddenly in a new environment where everybody was just as smart as I was in high school, and definitely felt that imposter syndrome. So I think for me, it was learning about, you know, how to study better, how to do things differently for myself, and just learning how to adapt to this new environment. And I think college is a great time to give yourself that space to be able to adapt, because nobody's going to knock you down for that one failure. You always have time to get back up and try new things and just get better and learn more.
So speaking from my perspective, and I'm always trying to be real when I tell my students, is it whether or not grades matter is subjective to who is reading your report card. So if you were graduating college, going into the workforce, and in an industry where people really don't give a shit about grades, it doesn't matter. I know a student that was doing real estate and was getting his bachelor's in communication studies, in interpersonal communication. He didn't do well on tests, so he was in a low 2 GPA, and he was worried. He said, you know, do you think this reflects poorly on, you know, who I am and my capabilities in the workforce? I said, what do you do? And he said, I mean, I sell houses. And I said, I don't think it matters. I think your ability in marketing, in clear communication, in following up, and in being authentic will translate into you selling more houses. And you know what? It's been 3 years and he's selling the shit out of houses. So it depends on where you go and what you're trying to achieve. But, you know, realistically, you're trying to get into a good graduate school in a 2.2, you're not going to get in. And I tell my students that. They're like, I want to try to go to graduate school. And I said, what is your GPA? And they're like 2.45. I said, you cannot go. You know, you may want to enroll in more classes through Open University and try to bump up your GPA. It is, realistically speaking, you are not going to get into these graduate programs that you want to get in. So it depends on where you go. I'm sure most industry jobs don't really care about your grades.
That's good. We all need a little, you know, realism once in a while. So the next question is, there seems to be, so I guess this is more so targeted to you, Dr. Tara. I'm sorry, I said Tara earlier, Dr. Tara. There seems to be this culture of niceness that seems to do more harm than good for women. Society's socialization often pushes girls to show overt niceness in the face of disrespect that can result in girls remaining in situations that are not self-honoring. In addition, emotional labor can often default to women in relationships. What are some ways that we can fight this culture? And how do you recognize when best to step away from a relationship and focus on yourself?
I love this question. When I saw it in the email, I try not to prep too much because I tend to start writing and then I write an essay next thing and I know. So I just wrote down a few key points that I thought were important to think about as we approach. I mean, we're all young adults here and we're in our womanhood and we're trying to fit in this space where it's been for hundreds of years not made for us, right? So as I think about this, the culture of niceness, I thought about two things. we need to clearly differentiate the general human decency versus overt uncomfortable niceness, right? Because when you say like, oh, you know, nice, like why do we have to be nice in these situations? Being nice is actually really good, right? Being a general like decent human being is important, and even though we expect that from every human being on earth, not everybody gives it to you. But we need to differentiate. Like when we're talking about niceness, we're not talking about, oh, let's be mean, let's be confidently ruthless, right? It's about still being nice, but knowing that we're not being overtly uncomfortably nice. So still being a decent human being is important. However, when we're talking about, oh man, I have to accommodate space for these other things, obligations, or people that I don't even feel like hanging out with or going out with or join their community or work with, it is something that we have to think about in terms of discomfort and uncertainty. When students ask me, you know, well, you know, like I went on a date and I don't know, he was like, yeah, like it's kind of late, like can I sleep over? And she was like, you know, I wasn't sure. I said, whenever there's uncertainty, say no. If you wanted him to stay, you will want him to stay. You'll be like, please stay, you know, maybe we'll have sex even, right? Like whatever you feel in your heart and your gut is probably the right thing. So whenever you're uncertain, that's a pretty big factor into like, let's not be nice right now, right? Let's not say, yeah, you can stay over. No, right? No, I'm not comfortable with you staying over. I would love a second date, but I am not comfortable for you to stay over. So being assertive in your communication is important when you're saying no, but also recognizing the future of like developing a relationship with a person. So it's being a decent human while saying no.
Okay, our next question is, oh, also thank you for the answer, because I feel like I know myself, I really need to remember that, like, to follow my heart and to follow my gut and not just do things because I'm like, oh, okay, maybe, but really be assertive. Thank you for that. Our next question is, how do you communicate about intimacy and why is it important to do so?
So there's emotional intimacy and physical intimacy. Physical intimacy is probably better known as sexual intimacy. The emotional intimacy, when you are trying to develop relational closeness with your partner or another person, basically trying to develop a close relationship with someone, it is important to effectively communicate intimacy. Number one, people hate uncertainty. People hate wondering. Oh, does he or she like me? Oh, well, what is he or she doing? Where did they go? Where, you know, are they ever gonna text me back? Or like, why are they liking other people's photos and not mine? Or, you know, uncertainty just kills. It takes way too much time, the time that we need to develop ourselves. And nobody likes uncertainty. So when it comes to you really feeling like you want to develop intimacy with someone, it is important to tell them. Number one, it strengthens the relationship because it creates this loop of trust, reciprocity of trust. You start communicating some relational intimacy messages with them, then they return it back to you. Both of you feel warm and fuzzy inside, and you're in a safe space to develop this relationship. However, there are times where people, especially younger people, communicate their want or desire of intimacy with another person, but then get shot down. This is where, you know, resiliency and like confidence and self-esteem really like need to be there for you, right? I'm not gonna lie, I've tried communicating intimacy with people in the past and they did not reciprocate, right? And did it hurt? Fuck yeah, it hurt, right? It did not feel good to know that you like someone and they don't like you back or they don't want to be intimate with you. It also hurts your general like level of self-esteem at the moment. it hurts your relational self-confidence. You're like, well, if this person doesn't want to date me, like, do I still go on dates? Like, what do other people think? So at the end of the day, also remember that there's, you know, so many people out there in the world with all these traits and characteristics. Not everybody is going to either like you back or return the intimacy that you want. You just have to make sure that you keep developing confidence and self-love and take care of your mental health and yourself. And whenever you're fully yourself and you're projecting radiance and confidence, people come in. People just come in because they're attracted to that positivity and radiance. They want some of that positivity, right? So just have to remember that as you develop into, I guess, an older adult.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very insightful. So sort of going off of, you touched upon it a little bit, but you said like you've been in a situation where you had to be resilient and your like the romantic gesture wasn't reciprocated. So I'm curious, I guess this can go towards Athena, and I wanted to ask you, and if you could begin talking about emotional intelligence, because I think in that situation it's really an opportunity to exercise emotional intelligence. So could you just sort of start off by defining what is emotional intelligence and what is it not?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think emotional intelligence is the capability for people to be aware of, control, or express your emotions. Also to be able to handle interpersonal relationships empathetically. And I think that also practices, you know, like in relationships, being able to be vulnerable with yourself and the other person. I think those are very key to a romantic or platonic type of relationship. I think a lot of people might have a misconstrued that emotional intelligence is just, you know, being overly emotional or something like that. But I think it's really deeper than that. But to really recognize other people's emotions when they don't portray it. But being aware and being an active listener is really having an emotional intelligence.
When did you become cognizant of like the term emotional intelligence? Because it's not something that's taught in school. And was there a time when you had a moment where you displayed poor emotional intelligence? And I think everybody, if they want to, can sort of share, you know, because those, I don't like to call them failures, you know, they're learning lessons. So anytime when you realize, you know, maybe I could have handled that differently, or maybe I could have been not let my emotions take control.
Yeah, I think just to kind of share like my experience, you know, in high school, it's a very challenging time when you're developing, you know, your core values, who you are as a person, who you want to surround yourself with. However, there's a lot of artificial, you know, people around you. Maybe we're all going through the same things. We're misjudging others. So I think in high school, I started to understand what it really is, what it means to be emotionally intelligent. I kind of, you know, I did a lot of self-reflection and isolation in high school, actually, just to understand, like, what is my why? Well, why do I choose the friends who I choose to be around? Who do I care about? Why do I care about them? Who cares about me? Just kind of like self-reflecting, asking yourself these hard questions, really shows that, okay, who do you care about? Why do you care about yourself? And like, yeah, kind of reflecting on, I guess, how other people think and how might they feel. And I guess one instance where I displayed a lack of emotional intelligence was in my first professional workplace. I had an annual review, and I wasn't wasn't too professional. I was very honest. However, it wasn't in a sense where it would be like professionally criticized. It was more like I was just criticizing the entire business itself, rather than like giving that empathy that they might need, constructing it in a constructive criticism. It was more just attacking. So that's one instance where I could have been displaying more emotional intelligence, kind of, you know, see how the other person talks to me, kind of understand their emotions, how they might feel, that telling them they might be doing their best. However, I feel could be better if it was done this way. I think, yeah.
Thank you. Would anyone like to add any examples or lessons they've learned?
I can add on to that. So I would say there was this one point where I really understood the definition of emotional intelligence. It was when I came across this video by Dr. Brown explaining the difference between sympathy and empathy. So for sympathy, it's more of a matter of, okay, I see what you're going through and I feel sorry that you're going through this. But then on the other side of that, you have empathy, where you're truly able to relate to and put yourself in the shoes of whatever this other person is going through. And that was something that I kind of kept in the back of my head. And I want to tell you guys about this time when I was part of the orientation steering committee during undergrad. So I was responsible for helping students move in, all of the first year students, and I was in charge of a group of volunteers, you know, telling them, oh, go help this student, go do this, go do that. And I had this one volunteer show up. She ended up being late and I gave her a task and she said, sorry, I need to eat lunch first. And I was like, okay, you know what, whatever, just eat your lunch first. I'll give you your task after. So then after she finished her lunch, she came to me and said, I'm ready to work now. So I gave her the task of helping students move their stuff around. And about half an hour later, she came back and said, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this job. Is there something else that I can do? So then I gave her something else that I thought was easier in my mind, at least. And again, half an hour later, she came back and she said, I'm sorry, I just don't want to do this either. And I remember myself getting super frustrated. It was hot that day. It was a long day. And I was just like, why can't this person do the job I'm giving them? And it wasn't until a later opportunity where I was able to interact with her again. And she told me, you know, I have these conditions that prevent me from doing a lot of strenuous exercise. And when she told me this, I just felt so awful. I was like, I can't believe I didn't see this, you know, in that moment. And I think for me, what I've really learned from that is there's always those first impressions that you see. You know, I thought she wasn't a hard worker, but there were these things that I didn't understand until she told me. And then I realized, you know, that there are just certain things people might not have the capacity to do or are not comfortable with. And I think it's important to be able to put yourself in that person's shoes and understand what they might be going through. And I think that's one of the really good ways to become a better leader, to just understand that not everybody has like the same level of comfort as you do.
Definitely. Any other examples?
Let's talk about EQ during sex. So when this question came up, I thought of this one moment when I was younger, as I was having sex with one of my former sexual partners. What happened was we were, we did a lot of foreplay, and then we were gonna go into like the penetrative act of having sex. And what happened was he was very excited, and his penis just did not become erect, right? Like he did not get hard. And at that moment, being young, a younger person, I thought, what's wrong with me? You know, like, don't you think I'm sexy? You know, don't you know that a lot of people would want to have sex with me? Don't you, like, so the way I responded was poorly. I was very upset, and I said, like, what is wrong with you, or what is wrong with me? And instead, I should have had empathy, right? What Laura said. Empathy works in every situation, even in bed. Like, you know, think about, well, he was extremely ashamed. He thought it was very shameful. And, you know, after that, about like 5 years later, we met up and I kind of talked about that. And he's like, oh yeah, that was so embarrassing. And honestly, I was just like, fuck, like, what can I get hard right now? Like, you know, she's upset. And I said, you know, no, like in that situation, the way I responded, I apologized because that was rude. And I could have had more empathy for you, for the both of us. And yeah, that was the one time that I thought that I poorly projected emotional intelligence in a sexual situation. And now I know to, you know that number one, girl, it's not your fault. It's never, you know, the person's fault. When that happens, it's actually that person's psychological or physical response to the situation. So now I have scientific reasons behind it, and I am able to now engage in situations like that with higher EQ.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I can share one example that I actually thought of like while Laura was talking about her example, because I think there's some similarities. One of my jobs in college was to be a manager of the football team. So we did like all the filming for the team, and like traveled with the team to all the away games, and just generally did a lot of the work that needed to be done to help them like get ready for practice and get ready for the games and whatever. And there were, I think, 4 of us who were in this role. So I think it was the very last home game of my senior year, which was, really important because it was the last game that I was going to like get to be a part of. And all of those guys were like brothers to me. Like the team was really close, including us as the managers. And one of the younger football managers just didn't show up for work. So we were scrambling to figure out how we were still going to get all the work done without her. And I was so mad at her because we didn't know why. She just didn't show up. And I was like, this is my day though. it's my last game. And I, like I said, I was so upset with her. And then we found out a little bit later that she had just learned that she was pregnant. And that's why she didn't show up, which is fair, right? So once I knew what was going on, I felt so terrible. And I was like, why? That was so stupid of me to be like, but it's about me, because it's not about me, right? It's about the whole team, but especially having empathy, as that word keeps coming up, but I think it's really important, having empathy for her and her situation, and not just like assuming that she didn't show up because she didn't feel like coming, because that's not something that she had done in the past. Like I should have known, if I had stopped to think about something other than myself in that situation, that something was probably wrong.
So going off of that, we can sort of, can be a bridge back to emotional intelligence, where we talk about regarding heartbreaking moments in life. How do you persevere despite the physical and emotional pain? How do you push forward towards the future when the present appears bleak in any circumstance?
I think that there are often times where we might feel disheartened, sad, hopeless, a lot of negative emotions. Especially being women, we tend to be more susceptible to feeling more emotions than males. I think during this time, just understanding that it is okay to feel these emotions, it does not make you less, or you might look at yourself and be like, oh, why am I feeling this way? I need to get over it. But just accepting that you're feeling that emotion, understanding that that's actually a power, that it's something positive to be able to feel those emotions. And just see if there's a lesson behind it, to help you move forward. What is this teaching me right now? What do I feel inside, and why do I feel that way? Maybe you're in a difficult situation where you see someone being mistreated and you feel emotional for them, you feel sorry for them, or you feel like you want to do something for them. That kind of shows like your empathy and your good heart in wanting to help them or something. So yeah, just also knowing, for me, what really helps persevere despite like physical, emotional pain is telling myself like, it will get better. I am capable. I have these powerful strengths. Also writing down like what my strengths are kind of helps put it into perspective for myself, that this is a moment in time where I feel these negative emotions, but it's okay, and I am more than that, and I can move forward from this. I think that really helps me get through, tough times, and surrounding myself with my passions and people who do make me feel better, family and friends, or encouraging women such as these on the panel.
I think about this question in terms of the grief process in particular. So for me, my dad died in a tractor accident when I was 10 years old. And in my family, we come from a farm family, rural America, like we don't really feel our feelings, right? So we just kind of moved on. And it wasn't until I went to college where I was like all of a sudden in a brand new world that I realized like I never completely grieved losing my dad, which is a very traumatic thing to go through, especially for a child. So it was in college when I finally went through that process of grief. And it doesn't have to be like losing your dad or losing a friend or something like that. I think this can apply to any situation that is difficult. But you need to feel the feelings. Like that's how you get through. Pushing them down does not make them go away. You really have to fully embrace and go through that grief process to get to the other side. And it's never over either, particularly when you're grieving the loss of someone. But it does get better, you know, the day to day gets better. And for me, I found, similar to what Athena was saying, you know, surrounding yourself with a support system that is there for you when you are having a tough time. And also, for me, dancing has always been something that helps me get those emotions out. And painting also, you know, so finding those things that help you to get out what you're feeling has at least been really helpful for me.
One more question that I'm going to direct to Dr. Tara. What words of wisdom would you offer to those feeling romantically behind in life, specifically in college? Because I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I'm this age, I should have already maybe had X amount of relationships or this amount of like these experiences. What words of wisdom do you offer?
Yes. One of the favorite things that I like to say when people are like, oh my God, I feel like I should be getting married, or oh my God, I feel like I should have children, is that the relational timeline is bullshit. The relational timeline is completely socially constructed. You can do what the fuck ever you want. You know, people that are married at 19, divorced at 25, second marriage at 27, divorced at 34, third marriage at 40, divorced at 42. I mean, it's whatever, you know? And maybe you don't find love until you're 40, but then you do, then it's the most intimate, the most wonderful thing that opens you up, that fills you with joy, and you have really, really good like 30, 40 years together. What's the difference? What's the difference between finding love at 40, 50, 60 versus people that found their love at 20, 22, 25, right? If you think about it that way, relative to like timeline in life, it doesn't matter. You may feel a little behind and like, oh my God, you know, all my friends I'm in my 30s. Like most of my friends have children, right? And I don't. Am I behind? If I subscribe to the traditional relational timeline, I am behind. But do I care? I don't fucking care. Because there are people that love their children that are like that, oh, this is the best thing in life. And I love that. But there are also my friends that are, dude, don't have a kid. Right. And I just say, well, you know what? As a quantitative person, to average it out, there isn't really a good time for anything but a good time for you. So if you think this is a good time, this is a good person, go for it. If you think it's not a good time, don't go for it. I have friends that are like, whoa, but what about the biological clock, right? If you're able to freeze your eggs, then you can have one when you're 45, no problem, right? If you're able to, and I mean, I have to acknowledge the privilege here because it is expensive to do so. But a lot of women are working and are making money. A lot of them make more money than the men and their partners or their other partners. And they're able to do that. Maybe do that, freeze your eggs and do that. Or maybe you decide to not have children. There's too many people on earth already. So all in all, relational timeline is bullshit. You make your own timeline, whatever works for you, whatever feels good, do it.
I want to echo what Dr. Tara said as well. So I've been in a relationship for 7 years, almost 8 years now, and everybody's almost always like, "Oh, so when are you guys getting married?" And I'm like, no, like I don't think there is a specific length of time once you're in a relationship with someone that like, oh, you've been together for this long, you have to get married by like X time. And people are always surprised when I say, oh, I'm not interested in having children, you know, like my end goal isn't domestication or any sort of things like that. I think for me, it's just about moving forward with my career currently. And, you know, I'm very thankful for my relationship, but at the same time, like Dr. Tara said, there is no designated timeline. I think a lot of these things are constructs, and it's entirely up to you to decide when things feel right and what time those things feel right.
So I believe that that brings us to sorry, it cut out. My Wi-Fi is a little spotty. I'm sorry. Hello? Can people?
I think you just got cut off again, Marisa.
I think her Wi-Fi is spotty at her house right now, but I wanted to say in Marisa's place that that kind of concludes our Q&A session. So if there's any other questions that any participants have or that anyone else wants to ask.
Just really quick, I just wanted to go ahead and, thank all of our panelists for, sharing their insights and their perspectives. And obviously also to the attendees for, listening and being here.
Thank you. We'll be sure to send out a recording of this panel too and posting it on YouTube. So if you want to share this information or rewatch this panel, it will be available for you to do so.